The moment I started doing this, I realized without context, this title sounds crazy. I mean, with context, the title sounds crazy, but nevertheless, that's what we're getting in on. African servants that could have been and probably should have been in the Fate franchise. By the way, if you haven't already, make sure you guys sign up for the Patreon. You get access to early content and priority on your request. So for an ample amount of years, I've had people come to the channel and ask me, where are the African servants? And of course, they're talking about sub-Saharan Africa. Again, your guess is as good as mine. But I do take into account the fact that the Fate franchise is written by Japanese creators. So I kind of don't really expect it anyway, but it still would be nice to see. And given the context, given the relationship between Japan and Africa, it's always been more so economical, political, rather than social, cultural. So even if it were to happen, they would have to want to do that. And given their culture, they usually kind of just stay out the way. My thing is, they also have the same type of relationship with other places that you would also have to do research on, and they still find ways to accomplish that. So I feel like Africans can be treated the same. And the problem with Africa, and not just Fate, but in mainstream media in general, people usually cover North Africa, especially Egypt, and then they act like everything else does not exist. You get to the Sahara Desert and people start wiping their hands like, well, looks like our job here is done, and they clock out. So most of the people here is going to be primarily focusing on the opposite. Getting straight into it, we have the Epic of Mowindo, that being the young African boy with access to magical powers, just trying to survive his father against fate itself. It says, in the mythology of the Nyanga people of Central Africa, Mowindo was a hero with supernatural powers who had many adventures. His story is told in the Epic of Mowindo. Mowindo was the son of Shea Mowindo, a powerful chief who had 7 wives. Shea Mowindo ended up hearing a prophecy that he would be removed from his throne by his son. To prevent this, Shea Mowindo decreed that his wives should bear only female children and that he would kill any male child that was produced. 6 of his wives gave birth to females, then his favorite wife had a boy. The child emerged from her middle finger and could walk and talk immediately. If you guys are familiar with the Chinese Naja, very similar origin to his background. Mowindo had a height of less than 5 feet tall. When Shea Mowindo found out about his son, he tried to kill the boy with his spear, but Mowindo used magic to protect himself to throw off his father's aim. Shea Mowindo then buried the child alive, but Mowindo escaped. Next, the father sealed his son in a drum and threw him into a river to drown. Again, Mowindo used his magical powers to travel beneath the water. So on multiple occasions, you have not only his father trying to take his life, but other people, and he still has the magical properties to evade all of these fatal threats. He is far beyond past someone that could be in the caster class. The child was born wielding a conga scepter, a fly swatter made with a buffalo tail on a wooden handle, an ancient axe, and a bag of the fortune goddess containing a long rope. Later, Mowindo led his uncles to his father's village, intending to punish him. They killed all the villagers and they destroyed the village. His father flees to the underworld, and Mowindo follows right behind him. There, Mowindo met with the ruler of the underworld, Muisa, who promised to reveal his father's hiding place if Mowindo performed tasks for him. Twice you had Muisa try to take out Mowindo, and twice you had Mowindo use his magical scepter to save himself. Mowindo tracks down his father, and he apologizes for trying to take Mowindo's life and agreed to share his kingdom with his son. Mowindo then rebuilds the village and restores all the lives of the villagers. In the tale of Mowindo, his mother gives birth to Mowindo through her finger. This represents Mowindo's magical nature as well as his small size. The scepter that saves Mowindo's life in the underworld represents tribal authority. Scepters are usually associated with leaders, and this suggests Mowindo's rightful place as a leader of the Nyanga people. And then you have him getting in trouble with the Pantheon after taking out a serpent. Mowindo was taken up to the sky where he had to endure blazing heat from the sun itself and terrible cold and rain. Mowindo endured this for a year, and after that he promised to never kill another living thing. The spirits of the sky let him return back to earth. From then on, you had Mwindo rule his kingdom in peace, instructing his people to live in harmony, to accept every child, unlike what happened to him, and to be kind to the sick. Going beyond his initial magical prowess, he's even showing levels of omnipotence, making journeys to the underworld, surviving a year of being next to the sun, fighting a serpent, dodging lightning, and even establishing a moral arc where he wanted the next coming generations not to go through what he went through. So he ended up being real driven on equality and fairness. And since he's not an actual deity, he is still a boy with magical properties. With it being a myth, he could still secure a container. Then you have Sundiata Keita, that being the founder of the great Mali Empire. It says Sundiata is celebrated in West African oral tradition as the great warrior king who established the territorial basis for the prosperous empire of Mali. According to the legend, when King Sumanguru conquered Kangaba, he killed all the heirs to the throne except Sundiata, who was crippled as a child and thought to have a doubtful future. Sundiata later made a miraculous recovery, regaining the use of his legs. Sundiata became king after staging a successful coup d'etat against his uncle and set about building an empire. He defeated Sumanguru at the Battle of Karina. And get this, though he was a Muslim, Sundiata also practiced traditional ways and was reputed to have had enormous magical powers. Some of his military victories, including his defeat of Sumanguru, were attributed to his magic, and he even had a reign for a strong 25 years. So again, we have another origin story where an African child was able to beat the odds, regain the use of his body where he was thought to have no future, and even avenge all of his siblings. So to top off the fact that he would make for a great rider class as such a notable ruler, you also can throw in some hints of magecraft from his reign. So he could also fit in the caster class as well. But I do think he would still be more suitable for a rider. And while we're talking about the first ruler of the Mali Empire, you can't forget Mr. Big Bank Money Don't Fold, Mansa Musa. It says Mansa Musa was the first African ruler to become widely known throughout Europe and the Middle East. He had an extraordinarily wealthy land and it enjoyed respect far and wide. While at home, he oversaw a growing and highly organized realm. He was a devout Muslim. He helped extend the influence of Islam throughout his region and became celebrated for his pilgrimage to the Muslim holy city of Mecca, during which he stopped in the Egyptian capital of Cairo and spent so much gold that he nearly wrecked the Egyptian economy. Musa was either the grandson or the grandnephew of Sundiata and became Mali's ninth ruler. Mansa Musa was the ninth Mansa, that being ruler of the Mali Empire, which reached its territorial peak during his reign. He was extremely wealthy. It has been suggested that he was the wealthiest person in history, but the extent of his actual wealth is not known with any certainty. And this is one of the reasons why I've always really wanted Musa. He would operate as an amazing natural enemy to Gilgamesh, because by law of the series, Gilgamesh is stated to have all the treasures in the world, which we know is something that was forged by the creators of fate, whereas Musa actually was said to be, to this day, the wealthiest man to ever live because of all of his gold. If you look up who is the richest person ever right now, it says Mansa Musa ruled over the Mali Empire in the 14th century, and his incredible access to gold made him arguably the richest human to have ever lived. If you go further to look up how much he had, the richest person ever is thought to have been an emperor with an accumulation of wealth often described as unimaginable or incalculable. The title goes to the 14th century African emperor Mansa Musa, and his wealth has been estimated to be the modern day equivalent to $400 billion. That being, of course, because of his massive stores of gold. So he's gonna pull up decked out, dripped out with all this gold on, and Gil is gonna be like, who is this guy? I can ask you the same thing, brother. Who is you? That would be wild. It says Musa embarked on his famous pilgrimage to Mecca, on which he was attended by thousands of advisors and servants dressed in splendid garments, riding animals adorned with gold ornaments. He stopped in Cairo, the leading city of Egypt, and spent so much gold that he caused an oversupply of the precious metal. As a result, the value of gold plummeted throughout much of the Middle East for several years. Thus, as an unintended result of his generosity, Musa nearly caused the collapse of several nations' economies. And this goes back into what was being said earlier. This man had so much bread that he literally broke the market. It's unreal. And all of this gold stemmed from him being the descendant of Sundiata. Gold was a very powerful resource of their region. The power of Mali was partly a result of Musa's strong leadership, but undergirding his power was the wealth of the nation's gold. After the fall of the Western Roman Empire, Europe's economy had been weak, but as a result of the Crusades, the European economy had begun growing again. This growth created a need for gold coins, which drove up gold prices and in turn increases Mali's wealth. Like the rulers of Ghana before them, the dynasty of Sundiata Keita established a monopoly or state control over the gold supply. So once again, just like his ancestor, I definitely can see him in the writer class, especially with all the journeys and the conquests that he made as a ruler. Definitely gotta hit him with that golden rule EX, stop playing with him. And even if he wasn't able to make it in as an actual servant, he would still make as a great in-between, considering the thorough economical dominance for nearly any chapter that can relate to him. And you know something else? How can you bring up magecraft and not bring up African voodoo? There are many African tribes that have literally been bred in spellcasting. I'm sure you have at least heard about it in name before. Thankfully, we have at least one servant. She's one of our only sub-Saharan African servants in the series, that being Nzambi. And I love the way that she's treated. She's actually one of the greatest deities of the Bantu pantheon. She's an earth mother goddess, and not a lot of people know about her because she's in Fate Requiem, which for all the people that's keeping up with that, know that it doesn't get updates. Sad story to tell. We're gonna get more into her later, but I had to at least bring her attention. As far as voodooists that I would like to see, I would like to see Marie Laveau, who is only of African descent, but she's also well known for her experiences in magic. And she's actually from the States. She's from New Orleans, Louisiana. Marie Laveau, also known as the Voodoo Queen of New Orleans. Laveau's powers reportedly included healing the sick, extending altruistic gifts to the poor, and overseeing spiritual rites. As a queen for several decades, Laveau was mother to many. People sought her advice for marital affairs, domestic disputes, judicial issues, childbearing, finances, health, and good luck. Laveau would in turn counsel her practitioners by supplying them with advice or protective spiritual objects such as candles, powder, and an assortment of other items mixed together to create a grigris. Voodoo in New Orleans consisted of root work and grigris or juju. The grigris itself, or the juju, is a talisman, an amulet, some type of charm or a spell that can ward off evil and bring the person good luck. Or it can work the other way around. It can bring them destruction. Here we have somebody that's reputed as a queen of her craft, at least in title. She's stated to be a conjurer, have the power to change fate itself, and has even shown forms of possession with her work. Again, great for the caster class. Then we have, of course, and I would say the greatest offender on this list is none other than the black samurai Yasuke, the same samurai that served under Oda Nobunaga. And the reason why him not being in the story is such a great offense is because Nobu plays a staple part in the Fate franchise, especially in terms of FGO. The Gouda Gouda chapters, Nobu has had ample amount of her own events where Yasuke should have showed up, and not only does he not show up, but we don't hear anything about him whatsoever. Criminal. It says much about Yasuke is unknown. What is known definitely is that Yasuke arrived in Japan with the Italian Jesuit missionary Valignano, possibly as Valignano's bodyguard. Valignano and Yasuke traveled to Kyoto where they met Oda Nobunaga, a powerful feudal lord who was seeking to unify a Japan divided by several warlords. According to the account, Nobunaga was stunned by Yasuke's appearance, by both his height and his skin color, as recorded in the diary of the samurai Ietada. In terms of height, Yasuke was roughly 6'2". He was black and his skin was like charcoal. Yasuke would have towered over the average Japanese person of that era. The majority of Japanese people, including Nobunaga, had never seen a black man. Upon meeting Nobunaga, Yasuke was reportedly stripped and scrubbed as Nobunaga believed that his skin was dirty. Yasuke immediately gained Nobunaga's favor. Historians assume that Yasuke knew Japanese well enough to have conversations with Nobunaga, and they also believe that he quickly proved to Nobunaga his skills as a soldier. Soon after their first meeting, Nobunaga granted Yasuke his Japanese name, accepted him into his service, and made him the first recorded foreigner to receive the title of samurai. Yasuke was also one of the few people who dined with Nobunaga, which demonstrated the closeness of their relationship. Again, going back into what I said before, Yasuke has proven himself to be a superb warrior, and to impress Nobunaga in the first place, and especially not being of his kind, he had to meet a definite standard. And even more than that, his background expresses that he was really close to Nobu. As a samurai, Yasuke would have fought in several battles for Nobunaga. His service to Nobunaga, however, was short. Immediately after Nobunaga's death, Yasuke joined Nobutada, which is Nobunaga's son. But Nobutada was also defeated. This led Yasuke into being escorted by Mitsuhide's men and to never be heard of again. But even Yasuke has become increasingly someone more looked at least in the last decade. And then there's Honbei, who substituted in a ruling position for the Dahomey kingdom. Honbei was a woman who served as the regent of the kingdom of Dahomey for a brief period before Agaja came to power. According to oral tradition, she became regent upon the sudden death of King Akaba because his oldest son was not yet of age. But the main focus here is her said involvement with the creation of the Dahomey Amazons. It says in some versions, it is stated that Honbei was the main person responsible for the creation of the Dahomey Amazons, a military unit composed entirely of women. The Dahomey Amazons were a Fon all-female military regiment of the Kingdom of Dahomey in today's Benin, West Africa. They were the only female army in modern history. They were named Amazons by Western Europeans who encountered them due to the story of female warriors of Amazon in Greek mythology. And so when I think about things like this, it just makes me want to bring in a chapter of the Dahomey Amazons, people like Pent, who is also a Greek Amazon, and even somebody like Hippolyta, who carries that nature, being the daughter of Ares and the literal queen of Amazons. I gotta see them meet up. Historically, I'm sure they would have been natural enemies, but I would love to see them working on the same side. The emergence of an all-female military regiment was the result of Dahomey's male population facing high casualties in the increasingly frequent violence and warfare with neighboring West African states, and a part of this led them into fighting the French, who we also have quite a bit of. When the European encroachment into West Africa gained pace, King Bahanzine started fighting French forces in the course of the First Franco-Dahomean War, and this would later lead to multiple of them. They were so confident that even the other side was giving them praise. French soldiers, particularly of the French Foreign Legion, were impressed by the boldness of the Amazons and later wrote about their incredible courage and audacity in combat. The women's army consisted of a number of regiments: huntresses, riflewomen, reapers, archers, and gunners. Each regiment had different uniforms, weapons, and commanders. It pretty much stands easy that they can fight in any knight class, or considering that audacity itself, they could just be berserker like Pent. You have Anansi, which this time is actually not a human, but represents multiple creatures that use manipulation to get ahead in society. Anansi is one of the most popular animal tricksters from West African mythology. Tricksters are mischievous figures who often oppose the will of the gods, which results in some kind of misfortune for humans. Like many tricksters, the sly Anansi can change his appearance to look like a human, a rabbit, a fox, or other animals. West Africans originally thought Anansi to be the creator of the world. He often acted as a go-between for humans in their dealings with the sky god Nyame, and supposedly persuaded Nyame to create both night and rain. Anansi is a crafty and cunning trickster who makes life more enjoyable for himself or more difficult for others by fooling humans, other animals, and even the gods themselves. By using his cleverness and what he knew of his victims' way of thinking, Anansi was able to trick them to achieve his aims. So this takes a complete turn from all the other figures that we had up until this point. You could say that Anansi, as a trickster, could work into the pretender class and work as a catalyst for the story that way. Though the trickster can take the form of many different humans and animals, Anansi is most often depicted as a spider. The spider is an apt form for a trickster god because spiders spin webs to catch the careless, just as Anansi spins webs of deceit to achieve his goals. He made great friends with Oberon. He is symbolic of the trickster character commonly found in mythologies around the world, in that he is usually selfish, clever, and willing to cause mischief for his own amusement or benefit. He is also more understanding of the human condition than other deities. So with the same thing that I mentioned about Tsiah, Anansi could appear as anybody and we would never know because he's a shapeshifter. So he really could work on both sides of the storyline, that being someone on our side or being that person causing the manipulation. We have Shaka Zulu, leader of the Zulu nation from West Africa, one of the most revered warlords of his kind. It says Shaka was the son of Senza, ruler of the Zulu, and Nandi, an orphan princess of the neighboring Longini clan. Because his parents belonged to the same clan, their marriage violated Zulu custom, and the stigma of this extended to the child. The couple separated when Shaka was 6, and Nandi took her son back to the Longini, where he passed a fatherless boyhood among people who despised his mother. The Longini drove Nandi out, and she finally found shelter under a subclan of the Matethwa. When Shaka was 23, Dingi, the Matethwa paramount ruler, called up Shaka's age group for military service. For the next 6 years, he served with brilliance as a warrior of the Matethwa Empire. So as an illegitimate child, you had Shaka, who had nothing essentially. He was exiled along with his mother. He went from village to village, and even they wouldn't take him and his mother in until they finally found one they would compromise. And he took everything that he went through and he showed Dingi that he was more than capable with his excellence on the battlefield, even when he was young. At that point, Senza, his father, passed away, and Dingi released Shaka from service and sent him to take over the Zulu, which at this time probably numbered fewer than 1,500. Shaka Zulu's military innovations transformed warfare in Southern Africa. His buffalo horns formation, standardized weaponry, rigorous training, and innovative logistics made the Zulu army a formidable force. His tactics and strategies are still studied in military academies around the world today. So not only had Shaka Zulu risen up to a kingly status, but the people around him couldn't get over on him. He was bringing new things to the table, and beyond him just being good on the field, he also had a great political hold on the region for a long time. He reigned for at least 10 years. Unfortunately, that's the former half of his life, and then the latter half reflects his descent into madness. As an illegitimate child, he was super close to his mother, and when she passed away, it's explained that Shaka lost it. He started taking out his people, starving people out, thirsting people out, any type of uprising from his people that were getting clubbed to death. It got wicked. When his mother Nandi died, he used his personal grief to mask the true motives behind an extensive political purge. Those who stood accused of breaking mourning taboos prescribed by Shaka himself were attacked and killed. One observer estimated that during the mass hysteria of the funeral ceremonies alone, as many as 7,000 people died from dehydration and exhaustion. Although this statistic is probably an exaggeration, the loss of life was undoubtedly severe. So if we were to get him as a spirit, I would prefer if they were to give the take before his descent into madness. I'm completely down for them doing the whole thing. The only problem is, I just know if they do, there will be an improper handling of his character because they're only going to show one dynamic. He's pretty much just going to be only a villain, and that's not wholly who he was at all. Definitely would fit perfect in the Lancer class, given his spear formations and his military military expertise. Just wanted to throw a few into the ring. I know there's many others, but my thing is to just get the ball rolling on some that could have been. And understand this isn't some type of anti-North Africa rhetoric, because I know people are gonna try to make that a point of contention on purpose. I mean, Africa is Africa. We can always spin back around and do that too. I just wanted to give a different perspective.